Unit 7, Hosea, Prophet of God's Covenant Love. So as we look at the northern kingdom of Israel, we just took a look at Amos in our last unit. You can see him right there on the timeline. And now we're coming up to the end of northern Israel, and we're going to look at this prophet named Hosea. So Hosea is important because he's the prophet that's actually speaking to the nation of Israel as it comes to an end. And so he becomes the prophet who is right there at the end, and he actually is the one near our ninth significant event of the nation of Israel. So number 8 was the split of the kingdom, and now we see number 9 actually happens right here, and that is the Samaria falls, but ultimately it's because of the Assyrians. So we see our ninth event, the Assyrian dispersion, happens right at the end of the ministry of Hosea. In fact, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that Hosea is right there, and his ministry comes right at the tail end of the ministry of Amos, but it also leads and lasts all the way up to the fall of Samaria by the Assyrians and the Assyrian dispersion. In fact, if we look back, we zoom out a little bit on our timeline. This is the 760 mark that we looked at with the prophet Amos, right? We have Amos and Jeroboam and Uzziah kind of going right there at 760 BC. But if we slide down a couple years, we see that 758 to 722, that's the time frame of the ministry of Hosea. And Hosea is right there at the end of the northern kingdom. He's right up there. And if we look at the kings who are there are actually, after Jeroboam II, there are 6 different kings that reign. It's a mess up in northern Israel. And a lot happens during that time before they eventually fall. But during the same time in Judah, we see that there's a number of kings, Uzziah, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, that Hosea's ministry also falls underneath. So Hosea had a longer ministry than Amos, but he had a unique one. Hosea is an interesting and unique character. In fact, God asks Hosea to do something that he never asks anybody else to do. And that is, he requested to Hosea to marry a prostitute. He says, I want you to marry this harlot as a display of Israel's harlotry to me, God would say. But Hosea has this huge heart for the north, for Israel. And there are 2 primary concerns that the prophet Hosea brings to the nation of Israel on behalf of God, because ultimately he's speaking for the Lord. And the first concern is God's unfailing love for Israel. So despite everything that they've done, the idolatry, the rejection, everything, God's love, not just his covenant, but his love for Israel, it beats strong, and he loves northern Israel. And Hosea is the one that really brings that out. Amos is the one who's more of doom and gloom and destruction. But Hosea really is the prophet that reminds them of God's unfailing love. So that's the first concern. But the second one is the punishment for their unfaithfulness. So you have this combination that we see in Hosea. In fact, if we look at the first verse, it says, the word of the Lord came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. We see that down there in the kings of Judah. And in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash. So he starts right at the end of the time of Jeroboam into the kings that follow. But the next verse, look what it says. When the Lord began to speak by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go, take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land has committed great harlotry by departing from the Lord. So God asks Hosea to do this really interesting thing, which is to be a living representative of what the children of Israel have done to the Lord. And later we see in chapter 2, God says that I will punish her, speaking of Israel, northern Israel, for the days of the Baals, which she burned incense. I love the language, speaking of Israel as a she, which represents his love for her. She decked herself with earrings and jewelry and went after her lovers, but me she forgot, says the Lord. But look at this heart. I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice and in loving kindness and mercy. And then I will sow her for myself in the earth, and I will have mercy on her who had not obtained mercy. Then I will say to those who were not my people, you are my people, and they shall say, you are my God. So Hosea really represents the heartbeat of God, his love for the nation of Israel. Yet Despite God's great love for his people Israel, the judgment for their idolatry has finally come, and it has come by the hand of the Assyrians, just as that God actually prophesied that it would. See, the Assyrians are going to disperse. They're going to come in and they're going to disperse them out of the land. And this was a prophecy that was actually given way back in 1 Kings because of the idolatry of Solomon, and even before him because of Jeroboam. Look what it says in 1 Kings 14:15. For the Lord will strike Israel as a reed is shaken in the water. He will uproot Israel from this good land which he gave them to their fathers, and will scatter them beyond the river, because they have made their wooden images, provoking the Lord to anger. And he will give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who sinned and who made Israel sin. So we see that Jeroboam's sin of idolatry carried forth for 200 years until the time which they were dispersed and destroyed by the Assyrians. So that is Module 2. Now we're heading into Module 3 next. And Module 3, we're going to go back and we're now going to take a look at the southern kingdom of Judah and the Babylonian captivity and all of the amazing things, all the kings and prophets and events that happened in the time of Judah, because some of the most amazing things in the Bible happen in this time of Israel's history. So if you would, join me for Module 3 as we look at the southern kingdom of Judah and the Babylonian captivity.